6:01.
I know, we're a little bit late. It's all right. We feel it once in a while, right? All right. Okay, let me welcome you to the August 22nd, 2024 meeting of the Town of Berthoud Planning Commission. I call this meeting to order at 6:02. Actually, it says on my watch. It's the tradition of the Planning Commission to start our meetings with a pledge of allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. All right, Ms. Rieger, at this time, would you please call the roll?
Chairperson Anderson.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Smith.
Here.
Secretary Semadalis.
Here.
Commissioner Donnelly. Commissioner Hoffmans.
Yes.
And Commissioner Pond.
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Commissioners. All right, well, good evening. I'm Karen Anderson, the current chair of the Plan Commission. I'd like to thank you for being with us tonight. Copies of tonight's agenda are on the little black table here in front. Please take one and mute your phone. Now, with regard to the minutes of the August 8th Planning Commission meeting, are there any comments or changes, Commissioners? No? Okay. If not, then I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I make a motion.
Nick moved, Commissioner
I move to-
Semadalis moves,
I move to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
and Commissioner Smith seconds. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Nay, and abstentions. Okay, with that, our minutes passed. Thank you, Commissioners. Tonight, there are no land use items for public hearing. However, our very important work tonight involves kicking off the Berthoud Housing Steering Committee and holding, an initial work session. You know, personally, I am extremely excited to begin this journey into analyzing our regional housing needs and to hopefully helping to provide some solutions. And with that, I am going to turn the meeting over to Community Development Director Ann Johnson for our introductions of those who are with us today. I think we have met Tiffany Brody, who is the Executive Director of Habitat. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Well, Chair Anderson and members of Planning Commission and our esteemed ex officio member to our Housing Study Group, we are so happy to have you all here. We're happy to have our consultants. Two trustees will be joining us. They might think that this starts at 6:30 because that's when the trustee meeting starts versus 6. And then we have Jeff from the Loveland Housing Authority, as well as Ryan Baker from the school district will also be joining us. Hey.
Well, just to break in here, just for our record and for those in the audience, having joined us is Mayor Pro Tem Sean Murphy. Good to see you.
Apologies.
It's okay. So with us tonight from Ayers Associates, I'll back up really quickly here. So the town applied for a grant from DOLA, which is the Division of Local Affairs, to do taking regional data, assessing that to determine how does it fit for the town of Berthoud, gathering some primary research from the town of Berthoud as well, and determining what is our housing situation in Berthoud when it comes to having a code that supports all type of housing, as well as meeting with builders and developers in a broad section of the community. So Ayers is going to explain that tonight and where we go from here, but I'm not going to explain much more other than Josh Alhava. He is a certified planner and he has been working in Colorado for more than a decade, is very familiar with community work, and he is the Ayers Associates Western Planner lead. So we've got some good team members from Ayers here tonight. So Josh, give a wave. And then we have Carlin Bosson. She is also a planner, and She leads many of the day-to-day activities and is Josh's right-hand partner for the project. Melissa Hunt will also be joining us. She is in the Midwest, and she is the Midwest Planning and Economic Development Lead for AIRS. So we have some good individuals helping guide us through this process. Carlin also worked for DOLA, or the Division of Local Affairs for the state of Colorado. So she's very familiar with housing and the vision of the state and where we need to go, but she's also very familiar with opportunities that we might be able to capture from the state. So with that, I am going to turn it over to these two, and just know that we are going to be having some community engagement events, and then we will be meeting as a group maybe once every 3 meetings. And so we just look forward to you all being here, and this will be happening for about 8 months. And then we hope to be wrapped up and ready to make some amendments to the code. So with that, I am going to sit down and turn it over to the two of you.
Great. Thank you, Ann. Thank you all for having us here. It's a pleasure to finally get this kicked off, which is funny to say that we're kicking it off when Carlin's actually been in the background writing a bunch of elements of the plan already, all the context, community context and background. So already gotten a really good start, already started pulling a lot of good data. Of course, data is just one element of the project. There's also, between qualitative and quantitative data and all the good information from the community and subject matter experts such as yourselves. So you might hear us use some phrases interchangeably: housing diversity plan, housing assessment, housing needs assessment. It's all the housing report and study. So that's used interchangeably. We'll talk about land use code amendments as part of our tasks, and that can also include policy recommendations and other efforts kind of all within that regulation policy framework. All right, it's working. So what we want to do is we'll do just a brief recap on our team and then dive into the purpose, kind of what our project scope is and our timeline that we've worked out. Also, what's the role of the commission in terms of the committee and you all's responsibility helping us out along the way. And then we'll dive into a few activities. We have a few different exercises to do to kind of get the creative juices flowing and also get us kind of primed working towards those public engagement events coming up soon. So as Ann mentioned, my name's Josh Alhava. I've been out here in Colorado for a little over a decade. I'm from the Midwest originally. Worked in Windsor as a community planner for a number of years, about 5. And then went down to the city and county of Broomfield for about 5 as well. And I've been with AIRS now for 3 years. And AIRS, we're a multidisciplinary firm. Out west here, our water resource team is very well known for doing a lot of work on the waterways and rivers throughout the state. So that's kind of where AIRS is more known out west, but our planning team, we help communities throughout the state. We help with day-to-day community planning assistance through on-call, but also technical studies, long-range plans, such as your comp plan they had updated a couple of years ago, and also code updates. So we're kind of all across the board in terms of community building and community planning. So that's a little bit about me, but I live in Greeley, so just a short drive away. So it's great to be able to pop down here and work with Ann and the team and you all kind of as needed. So Carlin, any other feedback on your side?
I'll just add, so I live in Denver, so not too far away, minus the traffic sometimes on the highway or the construction. But I most recently, like Ann mentioned, was with DOLA in the Colorado Resiliency Office, looking a lot at, how we build, where we build, how we could be proactively thinking about development with the changing needs and potential disasters. But also all of really looking closely at the new legislation around housing and the changes there that all communities are looking at. So I consider myself a Colorado native, grew up in Fort Collins, lived some other places, but then came back because it's a wonderful place to live. So look forward to working on this project with all of you.
Awesome. Thank you, Carlin. And then Melissa Hunt, I think she may be listening in electronically, but
She is on.
is she on?
Yeah.
So Melissa Hunt is one of our colleagues out in the Midwest, as Ann had mentioned. She's actually been out here a couple times and met Ann and the team a while back when she was kind of getting started at AIRS almost 8 months ago or so. So in the picture there, she's the one on the left in the yellow. Oh, is she on?
She's on, yeah.
Can you talk, Melissa?
Hey, everyone.
Hey, there we go. You want to give a little overview of yourself since I won't do it justice?
Sure, thanks for having me today. I'm based in our Madison office in the Midwest in Wisconsin, but assisting the rest of the team throughout the country on projects we're working on. And y'all have some really awesome opportunities, and so I'm really excited to be part of the team and working with you all. And I should be out sometime in September, so hopefully I will cross paths with you then.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa. All right, so kind of the purpose, why are we doing this and what are we doing? So it's really to understand your local market here in terms of housing and also the impacts that have been going on throughout the region. Because, of course, Bertha isn't in isolation. You're being impacted by Longmont to the south, Loveland, Fort Collins to the north, and probably even further south with Boulder and Denver. I mean, I think we all are. And it's just that impact with the Front Range. I think, when we think of Front Range, we're really kind of one big happy family. Maybe not always happy, but one big family that works back and forth and really face a lot of those same impacts. So really trying to understand, again, where's Berthoud fit in all this, and what can Berthoud do that's unique to the community and unique to you all, but also fits and plays into the greater picture of the region. And of course, that's why having someone like Melissa on board is great, because it's not just housing. You don't just look at housing in isolation. There's economic development and jobs that go into all this. So there's all these different factors that play in addition to transportation, all the great planning things we all love and discuss. We want to really define what attainable and affordable housing means and what that is for Bertha. And that's going to be an exercise we're going to do in a little bit. So I don't want to tease that one out too much because it'll be kind of fun to see what you all come up with a little later. We also want to look at where are the opportunities out there. What's great with housing is, right, we all know it's a problem. It's a problem across the state, across the country, across the region, but there's unique ways that each community can make adjustments. Each community has their own set of tools and resources and ways that they can be involved at different levels. And so it is really a local element and a local approach, which is great. So it's not like you're pulling something from over here and just copy paste it over here. You got to understand the local dynamics and what works at the local level and who the players are at the local level as well, which is why you have your great partners here, like Habitat for Humanity and the others that will join us in the future. We'll also be looking at the code, the regulations, seeing if there's any adjustments that need to be made just to align it with state grant programs and some of the new statute requirements. We all know there's going to continue to be new things pushed through state legislation as they continue to find ways to solve housing at a holistic level, but we always want to make sure, again, it's rooted in that local approach. And then kind of the feasibility with policies, different programs. Dole has done a great job with a lot of the resources. They've been handed a lot of these state programs and told to implement and go, and they've done a great job of really trying to make sense of that, working with planners. We've worked with DOLA quite a bit to help with like Proposition 123 guidance, help build that guidance materials and some of that stuff. So that way there is more that local approach and understanding how those policies and regulations from the state level impact the local communities. And so they've done a great job, though, of building out a lot of great resources and strategies that we can kind of tie into and then, again, make them right-sized for the community here. So our project scope and deliverables, this kind of breaks out the three core elements. Of course, the first one being the housing assessment. As I said, you're going to see the terminology flip around a little bit. Part of it's spacing to see how much fits on the screen, but we've kind of talked through a lot of this stuff, the baseline data, inventory. This is where we're going to really get a lot of pulse from the stakeholders, the community members, as well as yourselves here tonight to kind of get us started. And then we'll continue to have work sessions later on to kind of check in and work on fine-tuning those pieces again, adjusting the dials to fit Berthoud. At the same time, you are the subject matter experts. The community is the subject matter experts. You know your community best. So we really want to hear from you all. We really want this to be your plan and your guidance. We'll bring in expertise and knowledge, and we'll challenge ideas and we'll push ideas to see, what can we make happen here. But we're also going to really listen to you all throughout the process. Code and policy efforts, that one's probably self-explanatory. Just diving in, looking at a lot of those different strategies. Again, what works for Berthoud, what's palatable based on staffing, resources, also what the trustees see that they want to incorporate from a policy level and what that looks like. And then the last part is the implementation action plan. Having been in the public sector, I always hated being delivered plans from consultants that was kind of just left on the table and walked away, and you didn't really know what to do next. And some of it is whether you have the staff to do it, time to do it, the other resources to do it. So we really like to build in these implementation matrix, talk about how to work through these different strategies, what would be the steps we'd take if it was me sitting in your seats doing these things. So it really helps to build that roadmap. What's great is now it's a requirement from the state to have implementation action plans in these reports. So we're already kind of working ahead on that. We've already captured that in your process. Here's the project timeline. So you can see a very quick timeline. We'll be knocking out a lot of the data gathering over the next couple months. And then we'll be kind of jumping right into the plan drafting as well as analysis of the codes and policies. So that'll just continue to be an iterative process. We'll continue to refine and adjust as we work through things. The one important thing with housing assessments and housing reports is the data is always taken as a snapshot and the data changes all the time. So it's important to try and capture it, understand what's been happening holistically and historically, so that way we're kind of catching a point in time that makes sense. It's been really hard because the 2020 census data, a little iffy on reliability and what's in there, and so we always have to look at different sources, including the local information, like your building permit reports and other data that Ann and the team have. So we'll be working through a lot of that, and then kind of in that winter timeframe is when we start to build out the action plan and then the final report kind of right after the new year. So that'll be kind of the timeline and approach. And so what is the Planning Commission's role specifically is to serve on the steering committee, which also includes Tiffany and others. And Sean, thank you. I have to remember you're on both sides of me, so appreciate you both being here. And so, you know, being involved in the committee, provide input, you know, as a stakeholder, as an important body. I mean, you're all residents here as well. You just are very nice to donate your time to serve the community and take part in the Planning Commission and other boards, so we appreciate that. We also want you to participate in the work sessions, challenge us, you know, come challenge our ideas and think outside the box. That's what we want to do together. Review the deliverables as they come through staff. We'll fine tune them and then they'll come to you. Check them over, make sure the information looks good. I mean, again, the data sources, we only have so much we can pull from, but you might know something a little bit more local that we want to capture. So really doing that. But other than that, what we'll do.
Josh, can I stop you for a second?
Yes.
I want to introduce you to Board Trustee Tim Hardy, who just joined us.
Sorry, running late.
No
Tim,
worries.
Glad you have you with us. Sorry, Josh.
Yeah, you're good. So Tim, should I go like this really fast and maybe
Go
catch most of this? Okay, perfect.
Photographic memory.
You're good. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump in and talk a little bit about the engagement schedule and what we're looking to do here in September. And I'm going to let Carlin kind of talk through that, some of the options. And what we want to do is get your feedback in terms of, you know, what's the best way to reach the community? What are some of the strategies you've seen be successful? If, you know, we're going to be at a football game and have, you know, some activities up, well, should we have some snacks out for the family? You know, what are some things to help just get people involved? Also, the list that you'll get on the handout that we'll hand out here in just a minute, are there any other stakeholders that come to mind from your perspective as we fine tune that and flesh that out? And then, of course, you know, just looking over the general schedule of when we're looking to do that at kind of a high level. And then after that, we'll jump into a couple good activities. And so what I'm going to do is just shift this back to maybe the project scope deliverables. I'll flip between that and the timeline just so Trustee Member Hardy has a chance to kind of skim through that and just kind of see the quick overview of what we discussed. So with that, we'll hand a few of these out. Yeah, Ann?
And before I do that, I was remiss because I was so excited to kick this off that I didn't allow the members that are here to introduce themselves to give you a good idea of who they are.
That'd be great, yeah.
And so my fault, I didn't do those introductions.
No, it's great.
So,
And
yeah.
so maybe let's spin it this way. We're gonna have each person introduce themselves. And what is something that you're really passionate about with regard to housing in Berthoud? We'll start with Mr. Murphy.
Sure. I'm Sean Murphy. I'm the Mayor Pro Tem. I've served on the Planning Commission prior from 2018 to 2022. when I was elected to the board, and now I'm here. With regards to housing, I got into this initially, planning first, and now the board, to really tackle kind of the physical infrastructure that makes up Berthoud with the explosive growth we've been facing. For me, it's been really important to get that right spatially, aesthetically, in a way that respects our small town values. And affordability obviously is key to all of that, so.
Awesome. Thank you. Mr. Hart.
All right, set the standard. Do we have to stand?
Depends. For your day job, do you sit a lot and want to stand? That's a stretch.
I'm Tim Hardy, Berthoud native, actually. Been here 2 generations at least. Planning Commission, town board. Got on the town board, planning commission, just to kind of help with the whole planning of the town, like kind of reiterate what Sean has said. Just was wanting to be more involved with what's happening and where things are going, and kind of be more part of the process and not part of the sideline. So one thing I've noticed over the years and all the time I've lived here is just affordable housing has never really been made available. It's always just been houses, not very much in the way of emphasis of being put into multi-units or duplexes or even quadplexes, however you want to build them. It seems like the focus in the town has always just been house. And I wanted to kind of get in the process to figure out how we could change that and maybe change that direction. And the biggest hurdle has always been construction defect laws. So how do we get around that when you're seeing other communities building multifamily unit houses? And why are they able to do it and why aren't we doing it? And how do we convince people to bring that type of housing here and to keep the housing costs down? At the same time, just trying to figure out, why is our housing costs so much significantly higher than other communities around the country? We're all buying the same trees in a way, but where are we importing them and exporting them? So just wanted to be ultimately umbrella, be part of the process and try and maybe figure it out and steer things that way. So
Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Nick Simodalis. I'm originally from Chicago, spent most of my life there, moved to Florida for a couple of years and ended up here. I have background in finance, accounting, IT, and I came from a very small community, very similar to Berthoud. Lived there for about 35 years, 40 years. And I saw the city, or the town, it was a very small farm town, and that town didn't really grow. Everyone else around that town, as urban expansion kept moving out, was growing, and that town kind of got stuck in a rut. And when I came here, it reminded me very much of that town, okay? And I'm retired now, so I thought it would be a great idea to be a member of the town planning commission, be part of what is going on and help guide and direct and not make the same mistakes that I've seen made in other communities. As it relates to housing, I do like to see that whole diversity of different values of homes and classes of people, because I think when you look at a total puzzle, you have to have all those little pieces. You can't have, it's not like a baseball team where you're trying to have all 8 players. Everyone has to do their role. And some of the communities that I lived in, they were trying that, but there wasn't a sustainability factor, right? It's great to build homes and have density issues and lots of people, but at some point you have to also maintain the infrastructure. You have to be a sustainable town. So one thing I look towards in this project is it's great that we're bringing all these affordable type homes in because we really need it. I mean, I can't believe the prices coming from Florida and Chicago. But how do we sustain that? How do we keep people in a community that has affordable housing? Where is work for them? Do they have cars? out here, I don't see a regional transit system. So, how do we bring work to them? If we're gonna do this kind of stuff, how do we sustain the community and make the community viable for years to come? So that's kind of what my hopes and thoughts are.
Thank you so much.
All right, Mark Hoffmans. I'm also retired, by the way. I'm coming from Europe. I've been in the US close to 10 years now. I wanted to join the Planning Commission because, well, in a way, that's what I explained. I got experience in the international business for medical device. I mean, small companies becoming big, etc. So I learned a lot of things. And I'm used to say that I have a huge experience, and what is experience is the pile of mistake you did in the past that you will try not to reproduce. So I try to bring that kind of a good family father attitude, thinking, okay, well, trying to extract myself from every decision I do, but thinking about the people in the town. And one of the example was, I don't know if I can mention that, but for example, the last commission we had, we talked about keeping or not a school in the new development. And this is something that makes sense, a little bit as what you said. I mean, bringing more houses in the town, it's fine. I mean, it's probably good for business and good for taxes, revenue, etc. But it needs to be aligned with a vision and a strategy, making sure that we provide everything we need to the people living in the town. And yeah, what you said about jobs for everybody, or not simply bringing people, but not offering something to enjoy the life as anyone wants to do in this beautiful little town. Is that it? Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Sure.
These four gentlemen are really difficult act to follow, so I'm not sure I'm going to speak quite as long as them. Karen Anderson, I am current chair of the Planning Commission. This actually is my third Planning Commission I've sat on. I sat on our Planning Commission in Little Fishers, Indiana. We were going through similar types of growth as we see here happening. Matter of fact, at the time I lived there, it was, I think, the third fastest growing town under 50,000 or something like that. And so we saw, when I first moved there from Illinois, by the way, another small town, when I first moved there, we had 2 elementary schools. When we moved from there, they had 10 elementary schools about 20 years later. So you can imagine how fast the growth was. And so I sat on that Plan Commission and learned a lot about trying to balance keeping that small town feel. And we were very rural around us, although I must say we had a situation very similar to Berthoud, where we had a big reservoir on one side of the city. We had some of the more expensive homes there. In fact, Peyton Manning had a home there, for example, just to get an idea. So we had a very similar situation as here in Berthoud. So another reason I wanted to be on this particular Plan Commission. My second Plan Commission was in Commerce City. Very different dynamic there between and division between residential. If you know Commerce City at all, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it was very difficult to do the balance there. And so it was, you've seen it, it's so hodgepodge that it was very, just times a little mind-boggling as to how we were going to achieve what our goals were going to be. I have a legal background. Actually went to law school in Chicago, so Nick and I talk a lot about Chicago. So I look at things a little differently. I'm always looking at things from the standpoint of how do the regulations, kind of the second set of our task here. All right, I'm always looking at how do the regulations fit? How can we make sure that those meet due process and the other constitutional issues? How does that integrate with the other elements of our code? So that's what I'm always thinking about. And I think as far as Berthoud and how I see that happening and how I see housing happening, I worry a lot particularly being a mother of 3 children, one 20-something and two 30-somethings that are building families. I worry a lot about the affordability of housing and about having sustainable housing. I also, full disclosure, am on board of vice president of the Habitat. And from that standpoint, again, I have an affinity for looking at these things and saying, how do we make these things affordable for young families? How do we make housing so that it's still affordable for seniors? So I'm looking at it from that lens as well. Oh, and by the way, Abby and I both work for Big Four firms, different firms, but we compete with each other, but we still like each other.
I've been thinking it's funny to be on the other side of this conversation. Yeah. I'm Abby Smith. I've been on the Planning Commission for almost 4 years now. Joined in 2020. I've been in Colorado for about 10 years now, almost. And Berthoud specifically since like 2019. And I initially expressed interest in getting involved in the Port Committee, and something about the availability at the time or what I put in my application, someone on staff was like, you should really interview for the Planning Commission instead. And so I did, and it's been a great fit. I am really passionate about sustainable development and equitable development. In my day job, I'm a climate scientist with some background in water resources. And so, yeah, I like to think about the environment and how we can, build sustainably and also build with, regard to our natural resources and respect for our, the environment that Berthoud citizens value so much and take advantage of so much in terms of recreation. And yeah, I think that recently I've really been valuing the walkability of downtown Berthoud in particular. And so I would really love to continue to see not only affordable housing, but also housing that kind of merges well with commercial and recreational opportunities so that it feels seamless and doesn't feel like, big housing developments that are their own islands. And so I'm very curious to see how we can support that kind of work. Thanks.
Hi, my name is David Pond. I'm probably the newest member of the Planning Commission. I'm retired. I spent 25 years managing HOAs in metro districts. So I came from a little bit of that, a lot of that background. But the interest that I have in this project has to do with, I think all of us would like to see more affordable housing, but my particular interest would be to focus on regulations and bureaucracy and things that prevent a variety of different builders from entering a market. And to my way of thinking, the more competition there is to build in a small community, the more affordability there's going to be from that. So that's my particular slant on it, and I welcome all the information that you all are bringing together.
Well, good evening. It's nice to meet the Planning Commission and you all as well. Thank you for having me as part of the steering committee. My name is Tiffany Brody. I've been in Colorado for about 18 years now. We have a blended family. My husband's a native, however, so he brought me here. But we've only lived in Berthoud for just over 3 years now. And what brought us here, I was in real estate. So I obtained my license in December of 2018, and I was the managing broker for the group real estate at the 29th Street office, and instantly got connected in the community and learned Northern Colorado is such a special place with wonderful hearts and passion for not only serving one another in the community, but just linking arms and focusing on all things philanthropy, right? And just community engagement. And it drew our hearts. So we decided to move up here to Berthoud. We built a home, actually in TPC, a custom home. And I know that that's part of the problem, being a licensed realtor, right? So long story short, we moved up here. When I stepped down from management and decided to go back into sales, I transferred into Liv Sotheby's. So focusing on the luxury segment, right? And then I joined the board for Habitat for the Loveland affiliate and went to a conference. And it was such a dichotomy with networking with global agents with Liv Sotheby's and then to Habitat Colorado and learning more about the mission of Habitat. And I was hit like a freight train with conviction to serve the mission of Habitat. But at the time, I had no idea that Berthoud was looking for an executive director. So long story short, I've been in the role for a year now. Obviously, I'm extremely passionate and invest my heart and soul into the work we do alongside our board. And I am really excited not only to gather the data specific to our town and the growth projections, but building and cultivating relationships and thinking outside the box. Historically, we've only produced an average of a house a year. We've been affiliated in Berthoud since 2000. With our growth, I don't have to tell you, there's so much opportunity. And we've had conversations with developers that are interested in partnering with us and making a difference in the town. So thank you. I'll stop there because this is my favorite topic. And I could go on, but I'm really looking forward to the work that we're going to produce together. So thank you and nice to meet you all.
That's great. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for that. 2 quick questions before we jump into this. When you think of Berthoud and growth, love it, don't like it, somewhere in the middle. Don't look at your neighbors, come on.
So I think
As long as we
Kind of
preserve,
depends.
right?
Yes.
Okay, I knew that would come. Okay, and then I heard this from a few individuals, but I'm curious holistically across the group. When you think of neighborhoods, how many of you are in favor of neighborhoods that have a mix of housing types? Duplexes, threeplexes, single families? Mostly thumbs up. Okay. Seeing kind of a,
I haven't decided yet.
okay, perfect.
keeping his options open.
All right, perfect. Well, let's jump into this. Carlin, if you want to go over it, I'll be happy. I'll hand this out, and I have some pens in case you need pens as well.
So we just wanted to quickly share with you, this is a proposal, it's not set in stone yet. But one of the parts of the engagement piece of this, to hear from stakeholders as well as community members in this process, we're going to be scheduling 4 different stakeholder meetings, as well as some community engagement events. And so you don't need to necessarily pay attention to the dates and the times, but most of this will happen in September. And if we start with the stakeholder meetings, we've sort of divided them into 4 different groups who we want to hear from. One is sort of local partners, of course, Habitat, and Loveland Housing Authority, and we really don't need to get this now, but we'd love feedback on, there are a lot of blank spaces here, so who do we really want, who do you want us to hear from when we're gathering that information? So that's one group. Then the developer and builder roundtable discussion. We really want to understand, so someone mentioned, a lot of single family housing, and just what are developers building? And it's really important to understand, what are the barriers that they're seeing, or what's the, the bureaucracy or the regulations that might be keeping them from potentially building things that you'd like to see in Berthoud. So that's a really important discussion to have. I've listed a few things here just based on looking at some projects happening in Berthoud, but you all are the experts, so would love to know who we should be talking to there. Another group would be, the employers. So what are the big employers in the area? What does housing affordable mean for them? How is it impacting their ability to attract and retain their employees? This area, the Northern Front Range, is growing like crazy, and we know a lot of folks probably live here and work in other places, but what are they hearing, and what are the gaps they're seeing that impact their ability to hire? And then the last group with those stakeholders would be town staff. Similar questions: what are they hearing? How can they recruit? Are there certain policies that they know about? They're very knowledgeable with all the code and the regulations that they want to pinpoint and say, hey, this is something that we're seeing, we're hearing, this is a problem. That's part of when we do the, the code and policy effort. Look, what do we want to be looking at to sort of bring that to our attention? Again, like Josh said, we're not coming in with something in our minds that is the solution for Berthoud. We really, really want to hear from people are on the ground, they're doing the work, that live here, and what their thoughts are about this. So those are 4 groups of stakeholders that we welcome your thoughts on, people to invite. And then finally, of course, we want to hear from the residents of Berthoud as well. And we're currently looking at 2 ways to sort of be out there and be able to talk to people in person, and looking at, hitting up some of the Saturday soccer and flag football games at the rec center fields. We hear that a lot of people show up on Saturdays. So, setting up a area with boards and place to put stickies of what housing types do you like, what problems are you seeing, and just to talk to people, during that time. Casual, but talk to people and get their feedback. And then looking at going to a football game, also something that might attract, and really looking at we want to make sure that we hear from a variety of voices, look at that equitable approach that we're hearing from many different sides of the town. And that would be the in-person, and then in addition to that, we will be putting together a survey that we will spread out more broadly, that people can, respond to, paper, online, various ways of engaging with us. So this is kind of the listening and engagement section where, Josh mentioned that we're looking at the data first, but then that really important component of just really hearing from everyone, so that we can, really see what people are thinking about affordability, about housing, what are the gaps, all of those pieces.
Question, please.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring up the event schedule for outreach. I don't know how the rest of the commission would feel pertaining to moving one of those events to Oktoberfest instead. I think that's probably the biggest outreach opportunity we have in the next month or so.
Okay.
Which would be October 5th.
October 5th.
I was gonna
I would
suggest
agree
something
with-
like
I
that.
do
Yeah,
too.
would agree.
I was gonna
Flapjack
suggest that.
Day, Oktoberfest.
I had written that down right next to it when you were talking.
Great, okay.
The same way.
That's October 5th?
Yeah,
Yeah.
October 5th.
Yeah, please write it down on your papers.
Yeah.
The goal will be we'll collect those, your thoughts, your notes, your ideas.
So if you have names, people, ideas of, yeah, we'll collect them at the end. But yeah, thank you for bringing that up. We definitely want to make sure that, that we choose, times and days that make sense, that we'll be able to get as much feedback as possible, obviously.
I also think, and I think there's a group now of downtown merchants. I think you need to include someone from that downtown merchants group. I know, for example, from talking with Kelly Canino from Rancher's Wife, that they formed some type of group.
Okay.
And it would be interesting to have
Absolutely.
a representative from that group.
Yep. As part of the
Business or stakeholder.
yeah, the
Are they-
employer, so sort of the people as part of that group, are they, do they own businesses?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, we definitely want to.
Formation group, okay.
Have you considered inviting employers from restaurants in town? We have had some restaurant turnover, and I'm always thinking to myself, it seems like we have the population to support restaurants, but for some
Mhm.
reason, I
But
mean,
you
it's
can
very
walk
expensive
to.
to run them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right?
but there must be a reason why, that's
Yeah,
happening.
we'd love to.
Yeah, I
We'd
think-
love to. Again, these are just initial
Yeah.
ideas. Please write it down. If there's a specific restaurant that, you think we should talk to that owner. Again, we don't know all the people in your community, so no, we would definitely love any feedback. It's really important. We want to make sure we have the right people around the table to gather a variety of feedback and hear from folks. Great. So you can noodle on that as we move on and add ideas to your papers. And if anything comes up again that we need to discuss, feel free to bring it up.
One group that I was thinking about, and I just don't know how you get a representative of that group, but we have a large rural area that surrounds Berthoud, and I think it would be helpful to have someone who is somewhat representative of that group. I don't know if they have one association or anything, but if we could find someone who'd be willing to be a
Yeah.
spokesman for that group, I think it would be helpful.
No, we're looking to also include Larimer County, and they're on the
Yep,
list or not,
we are.
but,
Yep.
okay, yep.
County.
So hopefully there's some rural interface representation with the county, but course, hearing from the residents too.
And if you have any connections with any of these developers or other developers, again, this is just based on my looking at who's building here. So names or other ideas, this is not set in stone. We'd love to-
And I've written down Alex Hoyme with HT Land.
I was just kind of.
Yes, he's under, I talked to him last week, he's under contract on 2 very large parcels, and we've already started the conversation about Habitat being involved in that. So he has a real heart for affordable housing.
Great.
What's that?
So Carlin and Josh, if the members have questions or suggestions,
Yeah.
would you rather have them send an email to me and then I get it to you and kind of be that funnel?
I
Okay.
think that would be probably best, just
Okay.
so you're seeing it
Easiest,
too,
okay.
yeah.
Because I think that we want, the invitations will go out through, eventually through you. We'll provide the content and then, yeah, try to set up, the times that work best for the groups.
Sounds awesome, thank you.
All right, so I just handed out Post-its and a Sharpie. I love that you said Six Sigma. I do process improvement work too. That's a little side fun thing. But what we're gonna do is I want each of you on one sticky to define for me what you think of when you hear affordable housing. And then another sticky, workforce housing. And then we'll kind of start from there.
What was the second one?
Workforce. So one is affordable, one is workforce.
What is workforce?
Classify affordable
What-
and attainable as one and the same?
Maybe. Kind of want to hear what you think of when you hear the phrase affordable housing. When you hear someone say workforce housing, what comes to mind for you? It could be a price
What
point.
is workforce?
It could be job positions. And then we'll add a third one in there, attainable.
So what is the definition of workforce?
Just workforce housing, yep. Because a lot of times what happens is affordable, attainable, and workforce housing are used interchangeably, mixed up, and they're also broken out separately. And so part of what we were gonna do as part of our overall effort and within the plan is to really start to define what affordable, what attainable, what workforce housing is for Berthoud. And so just wanna see what your thoughts are off the top of your head. Make sure you keep them separate on which is which, and if you want to, just if you want to get up and stretch, you can bring your Post-its up here, or I can grab one from you, whichever you prefer.
So workforce, just people going to work?
If that's what workforce housing is to you, like who would be within workforce housing? If someone came to you and said, we're gonna build workforce housing, in your head, who does that include in your community? Who is workforce housing for?
And Josh, you're purposefully not defining what those terms are because you're wanting to get what the perception of the terms mean.
Correct, thank you.
What if it is the first time I hear about that? The name workforce.
I know you are a very creative individual.
Thank you.
I already gave you a gold one. The gold ones are really snazzy.
It's also gonna be very obvious which one is mine, but it's fine.
It's okay. There's no, we're all friends here. There's no judgment. If you want, you can bring them up, or I can come around and get them, whichever. Sometimes it's nice to get up and move around a little bit, especially since you guys sit in the seats for a long time. I kind of broke out quadrants here roughly, as you can tell, not even, so. Perfect.
Trick is gonna be reading the handwriting.
My handwriting's pretty bad, so far it's good.
That's why they built computers.
And my handwriting gets progressively worse every year because no one reads it anymore. Right? We're typing everything.
there's no right or wrong answer.
Nope. And I'll explain why here in a minute.
A whole office down there.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
Oh, you're good? Oh, you're okay.
I wish I would have had that when I was starting.
What's nice is it snaps on a roller kind of box that has like all of our other community engagement pieces, which is fun, cords and whatnot.
Same.
Nice with a small group, I know I missed it too, so.
We have to work today.
Yes.
Stand up, sit
You were
down.
warned. Getting your exercise today.
Well,
Don't have
at
the
least I
right
get
to
a
buy.
Sharpie and a pen, and I will never give back.
Yeah, I worry about you having a pen and a Sharpie.
Why?
She's gonna draw a
Being the-
mustache on
Well,
me.
being the enforcer, I don't know. You'll make with them.
Can I write on the screen?
I was at a meeting one time, you know, they got the dry erase board, and the one lady was using a Sharpie. I'm like, hey, don't use that marker. No, it's okay.
All right, so I'm gonna skim through these just for the group. Should I start with Commissioner Smith's first, since we all know her? So, just kidding. So under affordable, we have subsidized by someone else, housing built for low to middle incomes, starter home, young retirement, low income housing, sometimes subsidized, diverse housing at a price point where quality of life is maintained, 40 to 80% AMI per CHFA in Larimer County. Who wrote that one?
I wonder.
Sounds like a real estate agent.
That says mortgage.
If they more at 30%, yeah.
The gross monthly
Mortgage at
income.
30% gross, yep. Median income levels or lower can obtain financial aid, okay. And then last one, ooh, more people get access to it earlier. I'll just go with that. So under workforce, nobody knows what, question mark, I love it. Studio apartments, dormitories, housing that is within budget of hourly workers, fixer-upper, blue collar, employees of local and nearby business, provides to limit commute and provide access. Live and work within the same community, affordable, diverse housing with accessible employment. Then under attainable, first-time homebuyers, 80 to 120% AMI per CHFA in Larimer County. 30%, no more than 30% of your monthly gross income. Attainable housing priced at average income. Ooh, yeah, you guys are challenging my reading. Yep, I can't quite read that one. I'm gonna call you out. Who's that one? I can't read it.
Well, the other one was, I think,
Was I close?
people, yeah,
He did it
close.
in
Okay.
shorthand.
So, yeah, because, I mean, anyway,
Are you writing in Belgium again?
yeah. Well, if you want me to start joking, I can do that, but I try to be effective. So, the first one I said, people get access to it easier. I mean, or in an easier way, I don't remember what I said. A bit more effort and dedication to get access.
Ah, gotcha. Thank you.
Well, I know if,
That was great, even in Belgiumese.
thank you, Karen.
Another one is can
I
be
know these
purchased by
words.
low, middle income people. Housing that can be acquired in its location and its economic environment. Starter homes. And then government subsidized or rent controlled housing. Housing provided as temporary due to crisis. It's kind of a gamut. I was gonna say Tiffany's probably the closest on the number side of things, but what's interesting is it kind of depends sometimes on what you look at. Certain studies have different numbers and different thresholds, and they use the terms sometimes interchangeably. However, through our friends at CHAFA, the state, and the Department of Housing and Urban Development at the federal level, they've started to create the brackets to help break that down. And that's what the state uses for a lot of their grant programs. So what generally you tend to see, 80% up to 120, sometimes in the resort communities, you'll see 140 pop up in there if they get special signatures. That's more in your affordable attainable. Then your workforce a lot of times falls into that 60 to 80%. And then when you go below that, that's usually your low income subsidized housing.
And
So-
that is a percentage of,
Percentage of the area median, or your average median income for the area. The counties keep that data current for each county every year. I think it gets updated. I can't remember, I think February.
Yes, annually.
Yeah,
Mhm.
kind of January, February timeframe. They go through and they update it with the state, make adjustments, and it's by, number of people per household. So there's a nice table and rubric, and that's something we'll have as part of your report and deliverables. But it's fun because, again, you see words and phrases used interchangeably. And really the goal is that affordable just means that it's affordable, it's attainable. It ties into workforce housing as well. They really are kind of interspersed on how you structure them. But the goal is to really kind of pull affordable away from the notion of low income housing. Is how the state's been working through a lot of their programs and a lot of the new grants coming out. So, any other thoughts from your perspective?
Well, I do have thoughts,
Yeah.
and I feel compelled, I guess. Part of the misconception, right, is that when we think of affordable or attainable housing, we do often go straight to low income. But in reality, those limits are working individuals that have been in careers, whether it's education, healthcare, law enforcement, et cetera, and they are making good money, upwards of 80, 90,000, even for a family size. Again, it depends on the family size. So I just think there's so much opportunity to educate.
Yep.
Because the majority of the people that we know in the community
And what's important about it is
likely
you
qualify.
put positions with it, like put people that you can relate to in those brackets, right? Like you're for Berthoud, what I glanced at quickly, you're 100% AMI. If me solo without my wife's income, I'd be at that kind of 90 to 100%.
Because to me, the difference between affordable and attainable, affordable is more for like a single income type person. They can go out and buy their own townhouse, that sort of thing. Attainable means you're maybe buying maybe just outside your income bracket. You're kind of buying a little upgrade, but it's still attainable, but it's almost kind of out of reach.
Yeah.
But then low income to me is projects, and that's more for people that are trying to get housed after being homeless or just on the verge of maybe becoming homeless due to mental health issues or physical capabilities. They need something to where they're on much fixed incomes. Maybe elderly would fit in that category too.
Say elderly, sometimes your service workers fall within the low income brackets
Just the
because
whole-
of our
they're
income
like
ranges
so-
here.
They're so far below the median that we need that low income housing for a single family because not everybody's dual income. So-
And the other side of the equation is the average home price.
Mhm.
And that's where we have this gap and disparity, right? And therein lies the problem combined with the lack of stock, housing stock. We just don't have enough inventory.
Of the last, let's say, few homeowners, new homeowners in the current Habitat area, most of them were professional people, what,
Yes.
librarian,
Teacher,
teacher.
25 plus years in the school district.
Yeah.
Yeah, and our most recent one works in healthcare. Mhm.
See, that's where I put all that and the too affordable. A nurse, someone that works at Home Depot.
Yep.
Someone that works for the town.
Yeah.
You know, the staff
And
should
food
be able to
service, right,
buy
right.
a home on a single income and
Habitat employee,
have a employee.
right?
Your restaurant workers you were talking
Yes.
about earlier. I mean,
So that's to me all affordable. A single person based on their income should be able to buy a house.
And they shouldn't have to spend more than 30% of their monthly income on their mortgage, and they also now include utilities and insurance
Well, see, that's even like the trickles down to apartments. Apartments are going for $1,800 to $100 a month for a one-bedroom apartment. That's more than 30% of most people's income.
Yeah, so it depends on your income level, and I know you have a great table. And maybe, are you able to share that table with us before we meet next? So we can all kind of start thinking about, well, where do we fall in, or where do others fall in? So that we can truly start understanding, it's not necessarily about the position or what you can, the perception of what we can and cannot afford, because some people are more okay with debt and all of that. It really is, here are the boxes. The boxes that, it's a formula that's been created, and here are these boxes. And so I think if we understand what that box is, then we can easily take 30% of what that box is, and then that's what can be afforded. That's affordable for attainable, affordable for a workforce, affordable for affordable categories. So I think we need to start looking at it just from that math perspective.
So I have a question. When we talk about like low-income housing and affordable housing, what kind of numbers are we talking about? So low-income housing, when I think of low-income housing, I think, what is
Section
it? Yeah, Section 8. I mean, but when you think about like a Habitat house, right? And I don't know what it costs to build a I've built a couple homes, okay? I don't know what it costs to build a Habitat house, but I know a lot of those materials are donated and stuff like that. That's not a common thing, right? So in this area, what would be considered like low income? Because I've looked at the real estate around here, and it's like, my gosh, I don't know how anyone can afford it.
Yeah, it really is a struggle for those that are truly low income to find housing within the region. And that's where you tend to drive by certain neighborhoods or areas, and that's where you start to feel bad. That's unfortunately the situation that some of these individuals are pushed into or placed into for certain rural communities. And we do a lot of work out in the Eastern Plains and have done some studies out there. And, just seeing like some of the communities and families out there, and a lot of them will commute all the way over to the Front Range for work. And then have to go back way out there just because of the cost of housing. But I don't have the numbers with me in detail, but I'm
pulling
assuming
them up.
Tiffany's
I'm
on
just
top
gonna
of
ask
it.
you.
I was gonna say, I was just pulling them up if we really wanna.
No, I mean, just to
So
get an
these are,
idea.
and this will give you a great idea,
Just a
right?
good
Just to
idea.
put things
Yeah.
into perspective to Ann's point.
Yep.
So the 2023 Larimer County, we don't have the most recent, so this is what we're underwriting on currently. Household size of 1, you're looking at annual, this is for 40 to 80%. So this is affordable habitat, okay? Not attainable.
Okay.
31,840 to 63,680 for one person. That's a good wage.
It's a teacher's salary
Right?
in most cases, yeah.
So say average family size of 4, 45,400 to 90,880. So does that help put things into perspective a little bit? And then in terms of what does it cost us to build? So let's just go with a 2-2, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath house. So there's about 825 square feet on each level at 1,600 square feet. Cost to build, we are looking at about $336,000.
Wow.
And that's with $115,000 offset by gift in kind donation.
But our homes are all appraised.
But ours are appraising for the most recent one, which was a 2-2, 406.
Yeah, I mean, how do people afford that?
And that's the thing is most can't because then
They
they
can't.
need to be around 200 and some.
Yeah,
for it to
we have a
be
blended
in that
family of
range.
7 kids. Our kids cannot afford to live here. That-
It's a combination of the
They have
materials,
jobs.
it's a
I mean,
combination
I
of
understand
labor,
materials
land,
and stuff
Yeah.
like that, but the land cost here is
It's-
just,
yeah.
it's outrageous.
And really, I mean, Habitat does a great job because a lot of those starter homes, they don't need the high-end finishes. They don't need the top of the line, everything. Like they probably have from Mica in some cases for counters. I'm not sure if you guys, I used
We
to help
do.
Greeley a little bit.
Yes,
So.
but I will tell you that you bring up a good point. Oh, this is 49. Sorry, what, you just said something. Oh, so this cost does not include land cost.
Right.
Because we're finishing out our subdivision where we had 5 acres donated 20 years ago. So this is not our future. This is not tomorrow.
And that's where.
And that's my point. I mean,
Yeah.
just land cost alone.
Absolutely.
Unless you're getting those lots donated.
And water.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of the communities, they're working with developers to try and donate some of that land. I know Loveland Housing Authority, they've had that where they've worked with someone, had land donated as part of their project. And it helps the developers with, their pro formas and their bottom lines and everything too. But it's kind of that, you gotta build the partnerships, and that's part of what we're gonna flesh out. And we'll talk probably more about that following the stakeholder discussions, is more of some of those strategies and start to flesh that out as a group. So love that you're thinking about it.
So just a clarifying, go ahead. No, you go. I just had a clarifying question, because a lot of our conversations have centered around home ownership. Will rental properties be considered as a part of housing needs as well? Okay.
We'll break out both for sale and for rent, and then how those brackets are impacted based on the for rent ratios and the for sale rentals.
Okay.
Yep.
And I just wanted to get a point of clarification, so that 40 to 80% of area median income that Tiffany gave us, that's affordable housing.
Right.
That's not low-income housing.
Yes.
That's not attainable housing. And attainable would come on top, that's above that, and low income is below that.
Below 40 usually. And low income's where you need the subsidies, to your point, to usually try and make it work. And I mean,
Section 8,
Yeah.
things like that.
those big programs, not so much like other partnerships or other deals that happen as part of helping like a Habitat or anyone else that's able to hit that, even 40 to 60 or 40 to 80 range, because it's really hard to get them really below even 100, 120 in a lot of places nowadays.
Why is the workforce category referred to that way? It seems very broad and in the middle. And when I think of a workforce housing, I think of communities in Vail who people who work at resorts that can't afford to live up there. That's what comes to my mind when I think of workforce. Where did that terminology come from?
And we see places like the Vail Habitat try to help with that. We see where some of the resorts are helping with that.
Yeah.
So
Workforce was one of the earlier terms to kind of start to bring awareness to that missing middle, that gap in housing. And then that was doing it. So you'd see Windsor, they built workforce housing as part of their housing authority up there. And that's what it was called, as workforce housing project. Well, then over time, it's that's not quite hitting it. And then they got kind of grouped into a certain bracket. And so then they had to create another bracket. And so now that's why it's confusing. And that's why it's important for within the study and report, we're gonna break it down so it aligns with state and federal programming. But then when we're using the terminology and we're working with the community, we wanna use something that works for them.
And that's a question I had. Are there standards, for example, for state standards for what they consider workforce housing?
And that's where in the table, they kind of break down the thresholds a little bit. And they use really affordable fits under attainable and workforce. And they currently are splitting attainable and workforce between those percentage brackets, the 60 to 80 and the 80 to 120 is how the state has been using it with CHAFA and HUD. And even sometimes if you talk, it's sometimes the terminology gets intertwined. And that's kind of the interesting thing. And so it's interesting for us when we're doing the work in different communities, and different communities are using different phrasing. And so that's why it's kind of fun to do this exercise, just to hear where people are coming from. So then it helps us to work on how we educate and how we keep the terminology. So when you hear affordable, you're not just jumping to Section 8. You're thinking of what's affordable for our community and our workforce, kind of across the whole spectrum. So fun exercise. So I appreciate you all doing that. Got your juices. I see all the wheels turning, so I love it. The next thing I want to do is another wheel spinning activity.
Another word.
And front back.
Mad
So this is a Mad Libs exercise. So this one, the questions are kind of there, the prompts are there, just kind of fill out.
Thank you.
For the top one, I mean, obviously the easy one is to go with planning commission or trustee or anything, but you can also answer it as individual within the community or your position. Your day job, however you want to look at that, retiree or business advocate or community advocate. So what we'll do is we'll take 7 to 8 minutes or so to kind of let you work through this. And of course, if you have any questions while you're doing it, let us know. It's really just to kind of get initial thoughts, initial takeaways, and then what we're going to do is we're going to report out as a group when you're all done.
In this question, I represent Work4. Are you supposed to be talking about the group that you feel like that you represent?
So in some instances, some people like to say, I'm downtown business owner. I am local school teacher. If you're retired and you want to say, I'm a planning commissioner and retiree. So it could kind of be across that spectrum.
One of those just to have one, thank you.
So there is that awkward silence moment that happens right now. Usually I'll play like background music, but since we're in the government building, you never know what comes up on Pandora. I will not do that. Again, as it says at the top, be creative, think outside the box, also be honest. And sometimes it's not the easiest thing to be honest on some of these forums, but it really helps us get started. If it makes you feel better, this is the last formal activity I have for you all.
Next time we'll prepare, Mark.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next time we can either meet across the street at the brewery or a restaurant, whichever helps your juices flow.
Mark wants to start a band with some of the planning commission
Oh.
members.
Yeah.
Or he wants to make us bike across the country. I can't tell which
But
one.
you wanted our band to be on the bus.
Yeah.
It's
That was-
fun. I like that, the quorum.
I need to focus,
So then, Mark, what's your instrument of choice?
Red pen at the moment. That's kind of redundant.
All right.
First one done.
What's that?
First one done.
I think so.
Awesome.
I answered them.
That's great. Of course. We'll report out here in a second. How's everyone doing? Need another minute or two, would you estimate? Be respectful, don't feel rushed.
I play drums. Okay.
Trying to see if there's any other slides that you need to see, Tim, but I think that was generally it for what we kind of covered before you got here.
And this birthday sign looks brand new in this picture. Where are new signs?
I think they're working on
They're
them. I
working
think maybe they've been ordered.
There's some hiccups with CDOT. So Chris stated at one of the last town board meetings. CDOT.
There was a size, they don't let us have the big ones anymore, and they wanted smaller ones, but we said no. And so they're trying to help us find the opportunity to just replace.
I don't know which is worse, CDOT or the railroad.
Interesting that they push with signage. It's tough.
We thought the railroad was tough.
Signs are a fun animal, as you all know, signage and sign laws. All right, we'll do one more minute to kind of wrap up, and then we'll go around and report out.
Geez, I should have written in regular pen.
No,
That
it
was
did
a
Sharpie
terrible
too. and it-
idea on my part.
It's all good.
That's it. I'm done.
You see me move a lot because I don't like standing behind the podium all the time. It's awkward silence. I love the awkward silence. When I present at conferences, once everyone, finally realizes you're up there ready to present at the beginning, I think it's really quiet. Just sit there and scan around a little bit. You see people like give the weird look and they're talking to each other. I'm like, okay, now we can get started. It's a fun, awkward silence moment.
Take the red one, it goes better.
All right. One or two left. All right, let's start reporting out. I want to be respectful of your time tonight and not keep you all evening. What I want to start with is go around. So Tiffany, if you would start for us. What I want you to do is just kind of read through it.
Okay.
Feel free to expand or just talk through some of your thoughts as you were writing down your answers. That's kind of the nice part about Report Now is a lot of times we kind of talk a little bit more than we write. So it's good to hear like all those feedback, all those points, and then we're documenting all that as well, and then we'll collect all the papers after. So
Okay.
jump on in, if you would.
Yes, all right, I represent and work for Berthoud Habitat for Humanity and also a community resident. I feel Berthoud's growth is inevitable and worthy of embracing with intentional focus on preserving our small town camaraderie. I would describe the current state of housing as in desperate need of increasing housing stock while creating affordable options. My biggest concerns, fears about housing are community members and future generations not being able to own a home and reap the many benefits associated with homeownership, health, safety, security, education, general wellness, and then obviously also the opportunity to build wealth. Real estate is a fantastic avenue to do that, and it provides a legacy to pass down to said generations. What barriers could Berthoud face while working to address these? Lack of funding to support the infrastructure and building of additional homes. Let's see, what current housing programs or policies are working well? I do think that the grant programs that we have access to that are passed through, at the federal and state level, they are very helpful to us. For instance, we'll be benefiting $70,000 per home from Proposition 123 this fiscal year. That was increased from 40. So that additional 30,000 is super helpful, but it's really not enough to help us increase and build more capacity in a short amount of time, right? What are you hearing, observing from the community about housing in general? There is a desperate need for us to do our part, I'm speaking on behalf of Habitat, in building more affordable homes. We've got individuals calling all the time, so much so that I had to create an application cycle window. The board and I talked through that because the last thing we want to do is provide false hope or have this long wait list. And meanwhile, I'm still trying to build, right? So the construction timeline with that. Take a moment to reflect on your vision for housing in Berthoud. My vision includes partnerships to create, work-life opportunities. I'm seeing subdivisions with inclusionary zoning. And what are 3 specific strategies you believe can help address the housing challenges here in Berthoud? Partnerships with the town, developers, and builders is key and critical. Partnership even with I've had a conversation with Todd Piccone with Thompson School District. They would like to partner with Habitat to create workforce housing for the educators and staff within the school district. Wouldn't that be cool here in Berthoud? And then education and outreach ties to fundraising and development, which ties to us being able to support our mission, which ties to community engagement. So it's all cyclical and hand in hand, and increasing that volunteer that aligns with our mission as well. And then when we are done, what does success look like? And do you mean this process, this project? Okay, so obviously the action plan, but executing on that with fidelity. And then any other thoughts? Absolutely, right? My thought is I am just so excited to link arms with the community to further the impact and make a positive difference.
So, quick question for you.
Yeah.
When you were talking about the houses you build, are they 2-story?
Currently, they're ranch plans.
Okay, because I thought I remember, and this could be an old Habitat rule, that's why volunteers couldn't work on 2-story structures or something, because something with liability. This was like 9 years ago, so
Yeah.
I'm sure things
There
have
are
changed.
habitats out there that are building 2 stories.
Yeah, that's why
Yeah.
I was just curious.
Attached,
Yeah.
single family, all the above.
Again, I was Greeley when I was.
Isn't it
living there.
amazing what they're doing at Greeley Weld recently? Have you
With
heard
the
about
Hope
that?
Springs project?
Yes.
Yeah.
I
My
mean,
girls'
why can't
school's
we
right
do
there.
that here? We can.
It's a
So,
good project.
drop the mic, right?
Yeah. It's an exciting project. They have a lot going on
Oh,
there.
so exciting.
Very cool. Thank you very much.
Yes.
It's fun.
Okay. I represent myself, and I feel Berthoud's growth is inevitable. I would describe the current state of housing as unattainable. Biggest concerns and fears about housing is land has gotten too expensive. What barriers could Berthoud face while working to address these? There's way too much demand and not enough supply. So all of my viewpoints tend, because I worked with developers my whole life, I tend to think the way they do. And so that's where my opinions come from, is that there's too much demand and not enough supply. And the people that would provide the supply are going to only do so if they can make money at it. So what current housing programs or policies are working well? I wouldn't know. So I just wouldn't know.
No, that's great.
What are you hearing, observing from the community about housing in general? It's too expensive to live here. Reading through my own writing here. Vision for housing in Berthoud, mixed housing in different subdivisions with sustainable commercial development as well throughout the town, not too much residential. What are the 3 specific strategies you believe can help address incentives for builders, reduce barriers to building, and break some rules for certain price points of housing? When we are done, what does this look like? And to me, it looks like lots of subsidies to incentivize builders. Any other thoughts? That I've heard a lot about what people make in income, and my general feeling is that builders or developers just don't pay much attention to what the average guy on the street is making for their income, and it's a strictly supply and demand pricing model. So that's my point of view.
Insights. When you talked about one of the challenges being barriers, what kind of barriers come to mind?
Regulatory barriers and rules, hoops to jump through, and the point that you buy land to the time that you put up a structure. What are the things that get in that are unnecessarily burdensome? The hurdles that get put in the way, some of the costs.
Yeah.
What are some ways to get rid of, using first principles, what things are not necessary that haven't been thought of, like why are we going through this same process for every single builder of every kind of housing type? And I'm a big believer in questioning all assumptions right out of the hoop, right out of the pen, I guess.
I love the question why and challenging process. I think it's great. So thank you very much for elaborating. Commissioner Smith.
Okay, well, I represent a Berthoud resident, and I feel Berthoud's growth is fast but planned out. And I would describe the current state of housing as heavily skewed towards single-family homes and expensive. My biggest concerns about housing are lack of affordability and congestion associated with development. This is something that comes up a lot in public hearings, is questions around traffic, and Berthoud doesn't have a lot of houses, and Berthoud doesn't have a lot of roads. So the more houses we build, the more congested things are going to get, and a lot of questions come up around safety. My kid plays in this neighborhood, and those kinds of concerns, and I empathize with that a lot. What barriers could Berthoud face while working to address these? High construction costs and resident resistance. We get a lot of different opinions on the rate of growth in town. There's definitely not like an overarching voice saying, yes, we like growth, no, we don't like growth. There's a big range. And what current housing programs or policies are working well? This is a little bit indirect, but the comprehensive plan is a really great tool for us and kind of like guides a lot of the decisions we make as a planning commission. What are you hearing and observing about housing in the community? Something I hear a lot is that Berthoud is one of the most expensive markets in the Front Range, like even compared to neighboring towns where we should be more comparable. And I don't know, you probably know more than I do about how much truth there is to that, but I hear it a lot. It's definitely a perception about the town. Take a moment to reflect on your vision for housing in Berthoud. I would say a mix of multi and single family homes, ease of transport between housing and commercial, and lots of green space. I did not think of 3 specific strategies. I thought of 2 vague strategies.
Perfect.
And so the first one would be supporting greater housing variety. And the second point I had was increased public transport and other resources. We had a speaker recently, and I can't unfortunately remember who that was, but they made a great point about how we can't just build affordable housing and expect that to be enough. Like we have to have resources for people who want to move here at that income level as well, including like public transport or community colleges or whatever that looks like, and kind of like create an environment that supports people who are at a variety of income levels.
Don't assume everyone is able to drive or wants to
Yeah,
drive.
exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of like built-in assumptions about what it means to live in a like neighborhood in a small town.
Yep.
Yeah. And when we're done, what does success look like? This kind of actually sent me down an existential quest here. I mean, like in Berthoud, what does that look like? I wasn't really thinking about the project, but as like the town as a whole, like what do we want to grow forever? I mean, I know that we kind of have this like inevitable growth idea, but does that stop at some point? Does it like dramatically slow down at some point? I don't actually know the answer to that, but presumably we're not going to be in this state forever. And so we have to have a vision of what like a stable state would be for Berthoud.
I think it's great that you're thinking that way, and it's interesting because earlier the talk was about sustainable growth, and the more infrastructure you take on, that's the more you have to maintain. And there's that interesting approach of, well, we're getting building permits, so we're getting the revenue off the permits and the permit fees, but eventually at some point, residential, as a lot of people probably knows, residential doesn't pay its way in terms of tax base and everything. So how do you encourage and ensure that you're not overbuilding your infrastructure and extending too far and have 3 houses on this 200-foot road, just because of the cost per lot. So I think that's really good insights and good way of thinking about it. Any other thoughts? Sorry
No,
to cut you off.
no, I stopped there. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Chair Anderson.
All right. I basically represent myself, but in my role on the planning commission, I feel like I represent all citizens. So I feel that growth in Berthoud is really a challenge to ensure we have a balance to maintain the small town culture while allowing us to have sustainable growth. I describe the current state of housing as just very difficult and expensive. As I said before, the affordability is very restrictive for certain types of community members like seniors and young families. I think single people, it was mentioned earlier as well. My biggest concerns and fears about housing is the lack of diverse or housing products or the variety of housing products at this point, which in turn causes us not maybe to have some of the residents that we need to be able to have the type of workforce that attracts businesses that we need in order to get the tax revenue to create the infrastructure. So it's kind of one of those the ball rolls down the hill things. But what barriers could Berthoud face while working to address these? Opposition to multifamily housing, water and school capacity problems, traffic issues, funding for affordability, and cost for infrastructures. What current housing programs or policies are working well? I think that the newer comprehensive plan, it really does encourage different types of housing products. And so I think that we are starting to see that more with what comes before us and I think what comes before the trustees. So I think that is, we're beginning to see that work, at least to a certain extent. What are you hearing, observing from the community about housing in general? Well, I feel like I hear it from all different sides. I hear fear about too many people, fear about growing traffic, schools capacity problems, that houses are just too expensive and that people can't stay here because of that. If once they've bought a house, they can't afford it. I've also hear a lot of fears about the metro districts, and that's causing people not to be able to afford their homes anymore. Take a moment to reflect on your vision for housing and Berthoud. And I like Commissioner Smith, we're thinking more outside the box here and thinking what, not just my vision for housing, but how, once this happens, what will we think that this would look like? And I just wrote a welcoming community with a diverse and educated workforce with local entertainment and our installations and programs. Something more kind of broad. What are 3 specific strategies you believe can help address housing challenges? I had more than 3.
Okay, you good for, you make up for mine.
Balance each other out.
Walk past people.
I wrote more diverse housing products and types, programs for existing housing renovation expansion, long-term plan for building and maintaining the infrastructure, considering transportation options. When we are done, what does success look like? Again, maybe that our plan, whatever we come up with, maintains this small town feel and fosters this level of collaboration among the different stakeholders, including the town, the developers, the builders, residents, our merchants, that we have that fosters that type of collaboration in ensuring that we maintain this plan and that we maintain that small town feel.
Very good. When you say that multifamily can be a little bit of a tricky word with some residents, where do you hear them kind of going when they think of multifamily and what they kind of relate it to?
I think we hear them, they're worried about noise, traffic. Nobody wants that in their backyard. I've heard that from a few people. I feel like the people that always aren't as, in multifamily, they may not be as, this is not my personal feel. These are things that have been said to me.
Yep.
That these people may not be maintaining their properties the way they should be. It's those.
Especially when we get into like, are they gonna be rentals
Yes,
versus
versus
that people buy?
duplex, or, owners.
Like
Owners
townhome
of
style
multifamily.
type, yeah. Well, it's hard because I think we've all probably seen single family detached where you probably have like 8 cars parked around the house or on the street and a lot of people come and go in at all crazy hour. It's kind of interesting how the perception and stigmatism is there with multifamily and what people think of with multifamily. And I agree, like the comprehensive plan, I really like, I call them character areas, but you guys kind of like neighborhood areas? Are they character? Okay. I was like, I know I call them character areas. I couldn't remember if that's what they were, but I like it because it creates more of that inclusive and holistic neighborhood feel, and it's more about character and style versus the old way of doing land use planning where it pretty much looked like your zoning map of here's our single family detached, here's our multifamily. So it's creating a little bit more of that holistic look. So I really like that you guys went that approach. So really good job on that. Heard it a couple times, the comp plan side of things. Do you feel like zoning and some of the updates that have been made align closely with that vision? Do you see areas where
It's more or less what I liked about some of the things that we did before Ann got here was we worked on some incentive ideas of how do we get the diversified neighborhoods so they're not all like 500 homes.
Gotcha.
So we created little check boxes where, okay, you've got this type of home, this type of home, this type of home, you've got this much.
Diversity requirements.
Just, yeah, and so it kind of makes them have to look at their neighborhood development and make sure that they're doing a variety of housing styles. And I think for this, we could probably add a few more tick boxes on that list to maybe get that encouragement. We gotta, because developers are gonna come in, they're gonna build the most profitable thing and then leave.
Which is single-family detached
But
usually.
we've gotta give them some check boxes, some points to help them, help us by building more diverse products in there.
And what's great is, I mean, they have the models, they have the styles, it's just.
Because I think our zoning's
making
there.
them do it.
It's just, how do we get them convinced that they build these smaller homes
Great.
versus the big mega homes?
Yeah, well, I noticed some of the duplexes or, paired houses being built a little bit more on the eastern side of town, but they look like they're nice as well, good market rate ones as well. So probably not hitting quite the affordable range. So, awesome. Well, thank you for your insights. Moving down the line.
Yeah, well, I work for the wonderful Planning Commission of the town of Berkeley. The growth is together a very difficult challenge, but also a unique opportunity for a small town to grow. We need to make sure we are not going too fast and forgetting some items on the way, The current state of housing, I mean, if I speak about what has been developed, because, I mean, everything is nice because everything is new. If you look, we have a few, I mean, the downtown is very limited, but when you look at what has been developed, it's pretty new, so the equipment is there. There's parks and there's a new park being built. I mean, just close to the schools. Everything is fine. So but we also need to make sure that that follows. I mean, all these equipment and everything follows the growth as well, because. When there's a huge demand in a region or in a town like this one, the first reaction will be, oh yeah, let's build more houses, more houses, more houses. But that comes with a challenge a little bit further. My biggest concern is that we want to make sure that together with the development of the housing, we have the development of the activity. I mean, works, new businesses, small, try to attract entrepreneurs, because we don't want to have this town as a sleeping town, a town where people come back from Denver, they commute every day and they come to sleep. We want to have something that is more focused on developing jobs and opportunities, because, I mean, this is all related. Affordable houses will be, I mean, the group that we try to address for affordable houses would reduce if we can offer more jobs proposal, So that's a little bit what the challenge is, not focusing only on building new houses, but making sure, and that's for the Board of Trustees, making sure we make everything that is needed to be done to attract the entrepreneurs. What barriers? Well, so again, and it goes a little bit in the same direction, making sure we don't go too fast is also making sure we are not affected by developers going and pushing too hard. Because for them, there's a need, there's a demand. Okay, let's put many houses. And again, I refer to the last commission meeting we had, planning commission meeting we had about the school. If we listen to the developer, it would erase the school land and put more houses. So we need to make sure that we do the job in that. Another barrier would be the lack of jobs. We need to make sure, well, I'm focusing on the same thing, but I think it's very important. I think the work done by the staff, and again here I'm not joking today, the job they do is pretty good because everything we receive has been pre-digested, and we just have to read and make sure we don't see any stuff that we need to jump in. But for the rest, I think that's very well done. We have the comprehensive plan is pretty well organized, and the planning commission is trying to do the job. So I think that's pretty good. What I hear from other people, it's going fast, and the question is, isn't it going too fast? We need to make sure that we have the equipment together with the growth in the population, you know. And it comes a little bit with one of the next question is making sure that the communication network is adapted to what we do. So, I mean, houses are just a part of the development of the town. That's what I would summarize. Yeah, job offers, that's a little bit the same. Also, making sure we are not creating ghettos. I want to make sure that we are not putting all the affordable houses at the same place of the town, that we mix. Otherwise, we're going to have what you can see in many other cities is that, okay, the east side is nice, but the west side, oof, don't go there. You know, so we need to make sure we avoid that. What would a success look like? Same small town feeling in the future, a clean town, and I mean, a level of crime that is pretty low. And it all goes to, I mean, with all the rest, yeah, pleasant feeling in the streets. Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. Yeah.
I mean, I try to go outside of the box, but I think that's what we need to make sure. We are not focusing on the houses, but on everything that goes with the houses. On everything that goes with the increase of population and what type of population do we want to have.
I think it's great. I really like some of the points you were making early on, and you kind of point to them a few more times, is really that notion of helping you, that you're in the driver's seat for the growth and development, and not letting it happen to you as a community.
Correct, yes.
And I think that's really important. And there is that balance between, right, making sure that your process is clear and it's, you know what's required, and you can get to, you know, a point in the process where you're building or constructing, but there's also control over it, and there's expectations for the amenities, the services that go along with it, not just, yeah, just build, you know, 200 homes, subdivision, we'll worry about the school later, we'll worry about the park later,
Correct.
just give us the land and we'll work it out later kind of thing. So also how people get from point A to point B. So those are really good input and insights. So thank you. Commissioner.
Okay, so basically I'm representing myself as a resident and the planning commission. I think most everyone has talked about the same thing I'm going to talk about, but you know, obviously, Berthoud, at least, you know, I've been here for about 2 years now, and Berthoud is growing at a pretty good pace. You know, when you look at the residential developments that are going in, I mean, they're being slammed in. I mean, you look at, you know, D.L. Horton and all them guys, Toll Brothers. I mean, they're coming in and they're pounding out houses, and you know, when you look at that, it looks really great. But again, I look at it from a sustainability perspective. You know, what you can build, you know, the baseball field out in the middle of nowhere. Is it sustainable? Are people going to come? And when they come, what are they going to do? How are people going to live here? So I look at the growth as pretty fast paced. I think it's pretty methodical as far as the comprehensive plan is concerned when you compare the two. So that's kind of what I think about the growth. The current state of housing. Well, you know, when you look at Berthoud, I think you see a downtown area that is very quaint and unique. And then you start going to the outskirts and you know, even a little bit outside of the downtown area, and you're seeing new builds. But, you know, you also look and, you know, you have some of the older homes in Berthoud that are run down and, you know, they need some help. But that, you know, I see that, you know, from a balance perspective, you're starting to probably see more new homes than old, obviously. You know, the price of the homes are obviously very expensive. Even, you know, even the older homes. When we first looked out here, we looked at some of the older homes downtown, and, you know, by the time you buy a home and you remodel it, or you do all the work you need to do to get it to code, and, or to get it, you know, to today's standards, I mean, you know, even those homes are expensive in today's dollars. So that's what I think about the current state of housing. My biggest concerns and fears, so, you know, the rising cost of homes is certainly the biggest issue. But with that, I also think that the quality of those builds are a big issue. So when we think about, you know, how do we make it simpler for builders to come in and build a home? You know, what are those barriers? How do we, you know, kind of streamline some of that stuff, but yet guarantee a quality home? And again, I've built a couple of homes, and I owned a construction company at one point, and I've seen some of the builds out here, and it's, you know, it's questionable, you know, and I know that they're probably meeting the requirements, because obviously they're getting built, they're getting permits and stuff like that, but, you know, you start looking at some of these homes and the shortcuts that are being, you know, made, and, you know, the quality people are getting in the end. I think that's a big concern. You know, when you're slamming homes in, that's what you're gonna get. You can only get so many workers on a home. It's not like a custom home where maybe they take their time or whatever. They gotta build to a build plan. So that's my thought about that. Obviously, the other concerns I have with housing, at least in the downtown area, is the traffic concerns. I mean, I think you're really kind of limited on what you can do within the general area of the downtown area, because you need alternate routes to get out of the town. I know there's a discussion about putting Spartan through to 287 and stuff. We need to be thinking about that, because even getting across Berthoud Parkway sometimes over 287, I could sit there for 2 or 3 lights. So it's not just the downtown area, but it's the local, you know, main thoroughfares, and even safety on those main thoroughfares. So that's my concerns there. Barriers. So obviously, rapid growth, continued housing inflation, and it's, you know, when you look along the Front Range, nothing is cheap, and the price of homes just keep going up. And I'm not even sure that they're going down with interest rates going up. So I don't know how you fend that off. Materials are going up, wages are going up, everything's going up. So I don't think that what you see today will ever come down, at least significantly, to make it affordable. But, you know, hopefully at some point, it you know, there's some type of balance. Obviously, the other barriers, and I don't know if they're, you know, if they're barriers, but, you know, how do we service all these homes? And Berthoud's pretty big when you look out west and, you know, some of the more rural areas. How do you, you know, effectively service them? Is there, you know, infrastructure growth, schools, revenue and commercial development? I mean, obviously, Mark touched on this. You can build a lot, but And, you know, there's a period of time where you have some money in your coffers, but over time, if you don't have sustainable commercial growth that's bringing revenues in, you know, things start falling apart, so. What are current housing programs and policies? Well, I'm not an expert at that, so I don't know a whole lot about that. I know our comprehensive plan gives us a kind of a guideline, a nice guideline. So that's all I have to say on that. What are you hearing, observing about the community and housing in general? Too expensive. I've heard that. I've heard lots are too small. You know, the density in some of these subdivisions are so tightly packed that, you know, homes are sitting on top of homes, and obviously the quality of the builds. The other thing I've heard, you know, as part of the planning commission is when you do start seeing some of these new subdivisions that, you know, developers want to put in, people don't want them in their backyard, right? I mean, you know, too much traffic, headlights, noise, this, that, those homes are not comparable to my home. You know, those lots are smaller than mine. You know, no apartment buildings, you know, I don't want that kind of riffraff. I mean, just, you hear a lot of that. And people don't want change. You know, people, that I think is the biggest problem. People just don't want change. They don't want anything to change in their community. And I think that's just a, you know, a natural thing with human beings. They're comfortable with what they see and they deal with today. What's your vision? Well, my vision would be a healthy, vibrant community that can sustain itself, that has parks, that's safe, that has great schools, but yet is affordable to bring a mix of people in to kind of make everything complete. Because like I said before, I think you need that mix of people to bring the different cultures and the different backgrounds together in a community to make that community whole. Strategies that you can, okay, so my strategy. Obviously, you have to, in order for Berthoud to be successful, I think you have to have a good foundation. And the foundation is not just City Hall and, you know, the community. It's to have that plan, kind of like our comprehensive plan, but to really execute on that, to bring businesses in, to make Berthoud a town someone wants to come to. So when you think about small towns, you know, what brings them there? What makes that town? You know, towns have been made by having large institutions come in and build a manufacturing plant and hire a bunch of people, creating tax revenue and things of that nature. What does Berthoud want to market themselves on? Is it technology, because you got Boulder not too far away? Is it healthcare? What is it? Because I don't really see like a good plan yet. And I think for our trustees, that's something I would like to see. What are we going to market ourselves at? How are we going to build a foundation that we can continue to build homes and hopefully make them, you know, affordable, but build homes and communities and have people live in our community and want to be here. You know, obviously, working with builders, you know, it's kind of hard to work with a builder in certain cases where it's not a government-controlled thing. So it's not like you're going to go out and say, here's an RFP, give me 3 bids, this is what I want. But working with builders as far as what some of the requirements are, taking down some of the red tape, making things more efficient for them. Obviously, grants would be good. And then, again, you know, more efficient codes and processes. How do we streamline that? But, you know, it's easy to streamline things, but when you streamline things, typically you're giving something away. How do we do that without giving away quality? And that's, I think that's going to be our biggest challenge as we start looking at codes. Other thoughts, you know, obviously traffic's a big issue in the town. I think if you're going to you know, if we want to attract more affordable housing or attainable or workforce housing, whatever we want to call it, we have to have services to get people around, whether it be train, whether it be buses, something that we can tie into a regional transit system and get people to move around. Not everyone has cars, and I've noticed that in Colorado. Even if they do have cars, it's one car per family, things of that nature. Yeah, so those are my thoughts. A lot there. so.
Great insights. I like that you talk about traffic, and I like that you kind of look at traffic beyond just the development site, because oftentimes that's what our traffic studies do. That when we work with engineers, is they look, how's it impact these intersections rather than it also impacts this intersection, these other areas, and so it is kind of that community building holistic standpoint. And I do like that you talked about affordability and also quality with that, because I've always kind of scratched my head with that with some of the building going around. I'm like, one, not everyone's a good DIYer and probably should never be a DIYer. And two, they can't maintain their homes. So what are these homes going to be like in 20 years or 50 years or 100 years, like some of these old homes that look awesome after 100 years? I question how many of those homes will be able to be lived in 50 years. And then what happens, right, at that point? And who then is that the next like thing that we have to address and try and solve? So yeah.
Yeah, and I liked what he said about making sure we are not selling Berthoud as a place where you can build a house. Berthoud needs to be more than that.
Yeah, you don't want, it's very clear, you don't want to be a bedroom community that's just building homes. It's how do you pull all the pieces together?
Yeah.
Which is fantastic.
Just one quick comment about preserving the older homes and maintaining those. We could certainly tap into and expand Habitat to include neighborhood revitalization as well. Just
Such a
to
great
throw that out there.
Community development block grant funding to
Yeah.
help with rehabs and renovation. There's a lot of strategies and tools, and I'm having a feeling that might pop up in the report as strategies that we talk about later on, for
And
sure.
that's, like in one of the strategies I wrote down, programs for existing housing. And that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
You know, I think we need to make that a component of what we talk about.
I think it's great. All right, last but
The
not
trustees
least, our two
now.
trustees. Mr. Hardy, you
Yeah.
wanna go first?
Sure. Represent myself and the community. Feel Berthoud's growth has been pretty smart for the most part. I think we've done, at least in all the time that I've been on planning commission and town board, we've put quite a bit of thought into the comp plan and put incentives and things in it, but it's still a work in progress. As things change, we learn more and we see developments built. I think we can still raise that bar and keep raising that bar. Describe the current state of housing as not diversified enough. And that's kind of where we gotta go back and revisit the comp plan and figure out ways to, we've already put a lot of diversification in there for the look and feel of our neighborhoods, but I think we need to go in there and do more diversification for the type of housing. Biggest concerns and fears about housing is that it's not available for everyone. How can we build neighborhoods that's available for everyone? And then get the neighborhoods to support that too, because like we've heard a lot of things about, not in my backyard, I don't want those apartments, I don't want those split homes. But it takes a community of all levels, and I think in order to do that, we have to build that diverse number of houses. And once they're built, I think they're successful. You see it everywhere else, but I think people are fearful. We gotta get rid of the fear. I guess that could kind of fall under my barriers, getting rid of fear. But we need to build more incentives for builders to build more diverse products, and that's going back to our comp plan and putting in those check boxes in there to say, hey, this is kind of what we're doing. We need you to do more, even more, you know. Well, I think you guys all know what I'm talking about, right? Those different points.
Right.
You have to choose 3 out of the 5 or whatever. I think we just need to get in there and add a few more bullet points and get it more diverse. What current housing programs or policies are working well? I initially put none. We don't have any, but then it's like I had to think about that. It's like, oh, we do have some, but that's probably more or less about awareness. People aren't aware of them. I'm not aware of all of them. So I think for that line, I think I should just change my answer to make people more aware of what's available so that they will work well. What are you hearing and observing from community about housing in general? Again, it goes back to that fear. People are fearing of losing the small town charm, but if you've been on the board and town planning commission as long as I have, you hear the same thing every time a new development comes in. You hear the people that were in the last development coming in saying, I don't want this built because it's gonna lose the small town charm. Well, you heard that before that development, and you heard that before that development. So over about 10, 15 years, you kind of go, we're doing something right. These people are saying the exact same thing every time we build a new development. We're still keeping our small town charm and our small town feel, even after 5 developments. So while it sounds negative at the podium, I'm sitting here going, well, thank you, that's a compliment. I like that. And they look at me like I'm crazy. But I think you guys all kind of get what I'm getting at. It's like, let's see here where I'm at. And no affordable homes are not enough is also something else I've been hearing a lot about. We need to build more affordable homes or get more of them, because once you start building them, they sell before they're even breaking ground. So take a moment to reflect on the housing options for everyone, mixed use of work, live, play sort of things, where you're building a place to shop, you're building a place to play, you're building a place to live. So if that means commercial on the first floor, homes on the second and third floor, offices on second, homes on third, I don't know. There's a lot of good ideas in some of these other communities where they're making the best out of the square footage that they've got. Because you don't want sprawl. We've got plenty of land to build on, but do we really want to spread out with McMansions, or do we want to do these denser products where you don't have to drive anywhere? Because that's the thing with denser products is people think, oh, higher traffic, but in reality, if you build it right, people will walk to where they need to go because everything they need is right there. They don't have to drive down the street. What are specific strategies you believe can help address housing in Berthoud? Get development to pay its way, in particular metro districts. I've been trying to get this, and I'm sure Ann will recognize some of this. I'm always trying to figure out a way to finagle the metro districts where maybe districts 1 through 3 might pay for district number 4, and they don't have a metro district fee. And these guys are paying the fees to cover the infrastructure over here, because I've always been told metro districts are supposed to lower housing costs, but I never see it lower. I always see them at market value. So what is the point of a metro district? I still don't see the point, other than it's a money generator, and just follow the money, and that's where I'll leave that. Not all homes need to be luxury styles. We need more starter homes, things that are, we don't need granite countertops and Hawaiian-made lumber flooring, or whatever. I don't know, just some basic good starter homes that you can get into, and then over the course that you live in it over the next 30 years, you can put in your granite countertop. Hold developers accountable to their promises and the town's vision. I feel like, again, with all the years on town commissioner and town board, often see these developers come back years after years and start changing their minds. I don't want to build this commercial spot now. I want to build houses there. I don't want to build a multifamily unit there anymore. I want to build more houses there. So we need to start holding those in, and that's kind of where kind of leads more into my other thoughts, and that is, I don't like approving projects out 30 years, because in just the last 5 to 10 years, we've seen some of these developers build things that we don't like, and we can't change it because now they're approved, and we're stuck with that development to keep building down a path that we don't like anymore. So I'd like to see more approvals being more short-term. While that makes it difficult for the developer maybe, I think it's more in holding with the town's vision, because as we learn and build, we can then approve these things later on as they build, and not be held now accountable for something we approved 20 years ago. We can't change that. When we are done, what do we look like? More diverse housing options to fit all income levels and needs. Any other thoughts? Again, back to that short-term approval process. I really cringe on the thought of approving out 20-year builds, 30-year builds. I mean, they know they're going to build it in phases, so why can't we approve it in phases? I mean, that's kind of the old POD type philosophy, but I think we can still do something in that aspect of phased approvals. Hey, we'll approve your metro districts 1, 2, and 3, and then once you build those, then we'll decide if we're going to keep approving the rest of your development, because you did exactly what we need. You built to the quality we need, because there's a lot of shoddy building going on, like what these guys mentioned. Driveways caving in and washing out, and then they just can make it throw the dirt back underneath it. And and foundations cracking and stuff because they didn't do the right soil test or per shoot. And then we're kind of stuck because we've approved them now for a 20-year plan. And yeah, so I think that is all my notes. So, oh, and planning commission's always talking about town board doing stuff. I want to throw something back at the town, planning commission, that is question everything, including staff and the developers. If you feel unsettled about anything, question. You vote your gut, and if you feel like you need more time, ask for it. So,
That's what they're doing.
oh yeah.
That's what
I
we
know.
did last
That's just my
commission.
word of advice
We
to the
just did a
commission.
continuance our last
Yeah.
meeting.
It's just, don't be afraid to ask for those continuances.
Yeah.
Vote your gut. You know what's right. You know what feels right.
Yeah.
Always question, and keep raising that bar.
No, you're right, absolutely. I totally agree with you.
But thank you.
Really good insights. You mentioned antique earlier, but it's really that like carrot and stick kind of approach of, we have some incentives and maybe some programs here, whatever that looks like after we, go through all this effort for affordable, attainable housing. But you shall build this way, and this shall be how, the mix of housing within your neighborhood and the amenities and the services that are provided. If you're gonna do a metro district, you have to provide these things within your community.
And then keep to that and don't try and change out. Don't decide you're not gonna build your pool now because you can't afford it. You promised us the pool, that sort of thing. Yeah, just holding us accountable and so we can constantly change. I think we need to be able to grow as it goes. And so I just want some.
Thank you so much.
Don't let developers control us. We need to, I don't wanna use the word control.
Well, you're in it for the long game.
Yeah.
The developers are here. I mean, I'm not gonna say they're all just in and out because some are part of the community, some are long-term invested for a reason, and some have ties to a community, but builders and everything, generally they're in, they're building, they're doing their thing, and then they're moving on to the next thing.
And you have your 5 and 10 year developments, but then you get these big ones that are 10, 20, 30 years, and those are the ones that scare me in a ways, because once you vote that through, they've got a paved road until they're done, and we can't change anything. So.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Well, I represent and work for my family and the citizens of Berthoud. I feel like our growth is under control and gradually improving in quality at this point. Looking at the current state of housing, I would certainly describe it as extremely challenging, top to bottom. Obviously, affordability and attainability are key right now, but I have concerns over, long-term, looking at, the resources we possess, specifically water, but also just looking at the single-family home products that are being placed in the community. Obviously, they're oversized for the family needs that we have currently, in my opinion, from a square footage standpoint. I'd like to see, at least in that type of unit, a little bit more correction. Looking at some of the biggest fears and concerns, first and foremost for me is just providing enough options for low-income families. It's obviously a challenge right now. Looking at barriers that we could face, I would say the biggest one going forward from an affordability standpoint would probably be just general fear of dense housing, especially when it's integrated into not only new neighborhoods, but existing neighborhoods, and how that all works, even though that I do feel is essential to us moving forward as a community where our goals are aligned and we don't have any separation out of different income classes from any other area of the town. I feel like we're all in this together and we do better as a community together when we're all living next to each other rather than separated. Looking at current programs and policies that we're doing well, I would say Director Brody and Habitat for Humanity are doing an awesome job right now. I'm thrilled with the work that they do. And then just our initiatives as a town, although we're kind of starting off with a lot of this, the work that staff has done, the board has done to kind of take initial forays into middle housing, diversity, introducing manufactured housing, ADUs, stuff like that, I think are good steps in the right direction. What am I hearing about housing in general? The two biggest aspects of this that I find are often repeated to me are the fact that you have seniors that are trying to hang on and living in their homes and residences in this town as affordability and inflation and other expenses work to try and push those residents out of their homes. And on the other end of it, you've got young families that are really challenged getting into the actual community when they want to live here. They have roots here, they have families here, they have jobs here. So I see it as kind of a pincer on both sides where the need is probably the greatest from an income standpoint. Looking at a vision for housing, I think for me personally, it's really expanding that middle housing that's not a component here that also fits with our community character. Obviously, we need multifamily as a part of that, but it's also getting those palatable options that are not 3 stories and 40 units in a building that really, I think, kind of meet that middle ground, I guess, that's not here currently. Looking at 3 specific strategies that I'd like to tackle, I think fee structuring is worth looking at. Obviously, incentives are critically important to how developers operate. And then just what can philanthropy and government involvement do to step in on these matters? I think those are areas we really ought to look at on improvement. And then when we're done, what does success look like? I'm kind of in the same vein as Vice Chair Smith. It's hard to really come up with a good answer for that. Me personally, as an architect, kind of our unofficial motto is, you can work and work and work and never ultimately be done or find that kind of success. You just have to put a period at the end of it at some point. But I feel like our work as a town ultimately follows the same line. We're never done. It's really important to celebrate the small successes along the way, which I feel like we have a lot to be proud of here and continue to be proud of. But I don't know if there is an ultimate success to it. It's fine-tuning and constantly pursuing improvement. And then as for other thoughts, first and foremost, I'm really happy to be here having this discussion tonight with all of you. The wisdom that comes out of everyone here, the experience, it really has an impact on where this community is going. And I'm thankful for your work, for your volunteerism to bring us to this day, because I've been waiting for it since I started on planning in 2018. So I'm happy to be here and I'm really looking forward to this. So.
Thank you.
Mr. Murphy, and I really like a lot of things you said, especially about celebrating the things you actually have done, had, and have accomplished, because I think that doesn't always happen in government. It doesn't always happen as appointed elected officials and leaders at the staff level. It's always just, okay, now on to the next thing and on to the next thing. And it's like, well, do you see all what we did here and how we've already set the stage, and you've done it with the code. There's a lot of good pieces in the code. And you already have a great organization doing things in the community where a lot of places don't have either of those. And so now it's just a matter of when we have our discussion with the stakeholders and the developers, builders, we're like, what is the missing piece here? Like, why is, if this is all in place and you can build it, why isn't it being built? And I think there'll be some really interesting conversations there to just figure that out, because again, you guys have done a lot of good work thus far, so you should be proud of that. Especially compared to a lot of communities we've
worked with and who we've talked to, so kudos for that, so. Really appreciate your insights. Outside of that, really, we're kind of wrapped up. Happy to answer any general questions you have, but I would say if you have questions, kind of funnel them through Ann. I think it's always best to go through staff. You know, she's here and fantastic, and that way she can be apprised of everything going on. When we flesh out the engagement events and the stakeholder discussions, of course, we'll grab your papers. If you have other thoughts, just let Ann know. Especially with the engagement events, you know, we'll encourage the committee to kind of push that out too. And, you know, tell your neighbors, tell your coworkers and community members, so that way they can pop by and be part of the event and take part in the different feedback. And the same when the survey goes out, which will be probably a month out from now, or a month and a half out from now, so. With that, any questions for us or me?
I think it was a good meeting, very good meeting.
Thank you so
Great.
much.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on Mad Libs? We're gonna kind of use similar type questions with the stakeholders and their discussions, because they'll have very different insights on different things, so. Did you like the questions that were asked on that? Perfect. Okay.
For those that I understood.
It's part of the job of the committee is, right,
Yeah.
to give us the feedback on whether things are working or not, and we fine tune it, so appreciate that. But yeah, just leave your stuff there, we'll collect it after your meeting. I know you guys gotta do your thing and close the meeting and all the formalities, so thank you again for your time tonight, and
Thank you.
we'll see you again soon.
Did you want us to give you the Mad Libs page too? and
Yeah,
finish up
yeah,
with it?
yep, we've taken notes, but I think it's good just to make sure we didn't miss anything, so you can just leave them there, and we'll collect them after everything's wrapped up. So we're not disrupting any more of your meeting.
Well,
I want to
actually,
noodle this.
And if you have additional things you want to add on to this, you're not ready to, you could take it with you, write it down, and I would say maybe by middle of next week or early next week, and, you know, anytime Monday, Tuesday, just take a picture, scan it in, or drop it off to Ann, and she'll get it to us, and we'll just flesh out that final
Who are the
schedule.
top 5 employers?
Yeah, ask those questions.
Or ish? I'd be very interested in knowing.
School district is top.
Okay.
So, one question that I have, there are other folks that some of this information is gonna get funneled through, like, as you mentioned, the school district, but I think there were other, I think it was the Loveland the person from the Loveland.
Yeah, the
Habitat.
Loveland Housing Authority, Loveland Housing Authority actually helps other smaller communities that don't have a housing authority. They help do a big project in Windsor, and they've done lots of help with other communities. And Jeff had a conflicting meeting this evening, but he's the director of the Housing Authority for Loveland, and he will be joining you.
So those other people on the steering committee, will they be able to give the type of input like on the Mad Libs?
Definitely,
Yep, we'll funnel that all through, and she can email it out to the
I
committee
just
for
want to
those
make
that
sure
weren't there.
we didn't fail to include them in this step as well.
Yes,
A good point.
good reminder, thank you.
Thanks. Well, I want to thank both of you. I know our meetings are in the evening and go late. You're probably worried about, you're not worried about that because you do this all the time, but, you know, I think it's
This is nothing.
wonderful that you were able to meet with us. And I appreciate everything that you're doing and staff is doing to get this initiative going. I think it means a lot to all of us from what you heard tonight, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, well, the next thing on our agenda are staff reports. So,
What?
Wonderful. Yep, so three points. Josh and Carlin, can you tell us about the next time you'll be back in front of this group to give input from the data collected, from the data analysis, as well as what you've heard from the engagement sessions?
I think we could probably look towards the end of September, first part of October, just depending on which of those events we capture. So that way we can provide a little bit more, collective feedback and content. We might be able to send some stuff preliminarily, like electronically through email with Ann on like the data side to just make sure all of our data is looking good with staff, and if, the committee wants to look at that. But I would say in terms of, thanks.
You're welcome.
talking from back there, I'm like, that's not
I'm a
gonna help.
drummer.
Yeah,
so,
no, you're good. Appreciate it. So I would say end of September, early October is probably when we'll do like another committee discussion. And what we'll do is we'll talk over data, we'll talk over the content, we'll talk over what we've heard from stakeholders in the public thus far, depending on when we do that Oktoberfest event, things like that. And then kind of check in and talk over kind of our next steps in terms of recommendations, kind of the strategies, and start to kind of flesh that out a little bit.
So we'll confirm with dates based on if we have hearings scheduled and other activities that we have going on. We'll kind of get with you and bring you all back.
So about I would say a month to a month and a half will probably be the next time as a committee we formally come together.
Sometime after Oktoberfest.
Yeah,
Well,
so-
yeah, I would hope after Oktoberfest.
Yeah,
For
and
Oktoberfest,
I think
for
it'd be
example.
best to wait till after that, because then we can compile everything and kind of break it down in a summary format for the group.
So in practice, how are you going to do that? You're going to be there and meet people, or do you need us to bring people to you, or?
So we'll be there. There'll be, information that goes out through the city's social media, or the town. I always want to say city because Berthoud feels like a city, but it's a town. Through the social media, through the website, also probably posted up at town hall here, library, rec center, things like that. And then, yeah, definitely encourage you as committee members, residents, and appointed elected officials kind of spread the word. They'll probably be, during your meeting, during, trustee meeting, kind of a, hey, this is going on as an event, as part of the Oktoberfest.
So there's going to be a place where people can find you?
Yep, we'll have like a little booth space, table, some boards, information, a lot of different things, handouts, giveaways, little fun things like that.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so then the next thing is, and you all wanted to know when this was happening, on September 12th for this group, and you all will get an invitation for that. We're going to have Upstate representative, Rich Werner may be joining us, he's the director, and Audrey Herbison will be joining us along with Walt, our economic development manager for the town, to talk about how housing supports economic development and economic growth. So we are going to talk about that on September 12th. And then I know that Habitat for Humanity has been on our radar, that we wanted Tiffany to come on in and tell us about habitat efforts in Berthoud. And so we will talk about knowing what the schedule is, maybe getting you in. We do have some hearings and other activities in September, but maybe October would be good to even have when you all come to talk about the results. Maybe we give Habitat and Loveland Housing Authority some time just to explain what your missions are and what you're doing and your visions for Berthoud. So we'll get together and talk about dates.
Okay, sounds good.
And other than that, short-term rentals at the last town board of trustees meeting was approved. 50, the quantity 50 cap, 200-foot buffer, and
Meeting until midnight.
well, yeah. So,
You said
ADUs allowed as well.
Oh,
yeah,
ADUs allowed.
ADUs will be allowed for allowed for short-term rentals, and that is something that we can ask our team here to really understand and delve into. If you take an ADU off of the market, what does that do for the affordability factor in the town? And should that be, should we keep it? Should we, take it back to you all and to the town trustees and say, no, this isn't a good idea? So that's one thing that we'll be exploring as well. Because it might not have impact the affordability, or it might have a great impact. We don't know because we don't have that data. And that's it. Tawn was out this week. She had a well-deserved vacation after some tough cases and short-term rentals. And we had 2 wonderful webinars. 7 individuals, but 2 were repeats at both for the short-term rental session. So we were able to tell people what we're looking for in the submittal guidelines for short-term rentals, when the submittal is, how we're going to be processing everything and what that looks like.
What's the
So-
exact date for being able to apply?
What was
What's the
your,
exact date for being able to apply?
I think it's midnight on the 23rd of September, is that correct? Yeah, midnight on Monday. So if you want to stay up until 12:01 a.m., go ahead and
Monday
get it
morning.
submitted.
What, a question regarding what you said about having long-term commitments, sorry. How is it for these short-term rentals? When you get an approval from the town for, is there a time delay?
1 year.
1 year,
There's an
okay.
annual renewal.
Okay,
And they also have to have a business license and remit tax to the town. So if there are repeat offenders and bad actors, they could lose their license during that 1 year time frame. However, if they could also not be guaranteed to have a renewal.
yeah. So, but this is for the individual, but for the system itself in general, is there a way for us to, if it doesn't go well at all, we say, oh, we back out, we don't do that
Definitely.
anymore, yeah.
Let's say the town, from a staff perspective, we're seeing continual issues with short-term rentals, compliance issues, complaints,
Yeah.
safety,
Yeah.
all of these other issues. Definitely, we would bring it back in a work session to both Planning Commission and the Town Board of Trustees to talk about this, this is not working for the
Yeah.
town.
Okay.
It's harder to take things away once they've been given. It's easier to give. And so there would have to be some serious
Cases, yeah.
cases and problems
Yeah.
in order to take that away. But right now, they're prohibited. So everybody that's operating one right now, naughty, naughty.
So if you're granted a license and you have a really good experience, that following year, are you automatically in line for
They have to
license?
reapply.
It is a yeah,
Yep.
okay.
And it's kind of first come.
First come,
First
first serve, reapply, yeah, okay.
Right.
That's interesting.
All right.
That's it.
And then you said there was a 200-foot buffer.
200-foot buffer.
What was the methodology behind that? I mean, Berthoud's a big town.
I don't know, I didn't want it.
I know Ton presented.
This
on
is
it.
spacing. It's
Yeah,
not a
no, I
density
understand
thing.
it's the spacing, but I mean, say you have like one neighborhood that has a whole bunch of these things, I mean.
Basically eliminates a bunch of them.
Yeah,
So like there's a townhouse development up in TPC that had like 6 or 8 of them in one cluster of townhomes. So basically, it'll eliminate all but 2 maybe.
I think Ton did a bunch of research on
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
communities and their regulations around it, and it was presented like 50, 100, 200 foot
yeah, okay.
option.
Yep, and then for the trustees, she presented,
'Cause I know those stuff are
I
like
think a
500.
50, a 200, 400, 600, 800, 1,000 foot, just to see what that was
What they look
over the
like.
entire town.
Yeah.
And as Josh was just saying, that a traditional old town block is about 300 feet in distance.
Right.
And so you could essentially get one on each corner or one mid-block. And so it's just based on a lot of science, based on what's been done in other communities. And some of it is an arbitrary decision as well. And we just have to wait and see how it works out.
And as I recall, our concern and what our recommendation to the board was, we were worried about them being too close together, particularly that
Correct.
one block
Yeah.
that
They had
Trustee
5 or
Hardy was
15
talking about.
houses, yeah.
So I'm happy that happened.
Yeah, so your recommendation on the buffer carried through to the town trustees.
We did something that most communities don't do, and that is put a cap and a buffer. Most places do one or the other.
I didn't
according to
realize
the
that's
concept.
interesting.
Wasn't it really good?
Right.
Okay.
That was a
So-
good meeting.
Any commissioner have a question, report, concern that they want to bring up at this point?
I won't be there September 12th. I won't be available for the first time and the last time, maybe.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, I know. Why, am I disturbing here?
No, you aren't. And I know, David, you had
Yeah,
some dates.
I'm out both meetings in September.
Okay, all right. So just remember for planning commission 4 times.
Right.
And then we have a conversation.
4 times in a row or 4 times in total?
I believe it is 4 times in a calendar year
Okay,
and 4 times in 4 months.
okay,
So if you're 4 times, if you miss one in November, December, January, February, that's 4 months that are straddling the calendar year, that counts, or it's 4 months in the calendar year as well,
okay.
4 times.
So
You
plan
got
Yeah,
that, or you
so,
need a
yeah,
little-
you better,
Your
I'm gonna
Your
start paying
unexpected
attention.
absences, careful.
And we do have, an interview, for a reappointment to the planning commission. And that individual, the interview date happens to be when this planning commissioner's child is getting married at that exact time.
I wonder who that could be.
So that interview has to be rescheduled, and then we do still have an opening. So if anybody knows of somebody who would be a good planning commissioner, we do have another opening as well.
Recruit.
That's it, yeah.
All right, so now I really do think, and we're looking for another building permit technician. And we thought we had one that had 6 years' experience, and then they decided we sent the offer letter, and then they decided, no, I really don't want to move. So now we're starting all over, but we have 3 interviews next week, so
For a what?
a third building permit technician.
Oh, okay.
We have 1.5, and so this will be a second full, and then we have a part-time.
Okay.
So we'll have
He
2.5.
has no legs or
Who's the
something.
hot?
I don't know, no legs.
All right, anything else that we wanted to address? No, again, I want to thank our folks from Aris for being with us. It's wonderful having the trustees be with us.
Yeah.
And we wanted to thank you for being with us as well, Tiffany.
Thank you. It's my honor.
All right, well, with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So we have Commissioner Smith, who
I
is
second.
moved, and Commissioner Simodalis, second, and all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, and abstentions. We are adjourned. Yay. I should have let you do it.